Okay, so I'm going to show you how to graph two of the four more difficult functions here. The first one being a trig function. So we haven't studied this yet, but that's okay. We've studied a little bit about sine. We just haven't seen the graph yet. Y equals sine of x. So you can start with a basic function like that. And this has a lot of possibilities for your project. You can just hit the trig key there, locate right this, by the way, to access the sine function. Oh, it's not graphing right. See, this is a graphs page, and it shouldn't look like this. It should look a little different. So if you hit menu and go to settings in your geometry page, and let's change it to degree here, or radian measure, and see if this makes a difference. Now I have a little better sine function here. So the nice thing about the sine function is you can grab it and move it. Let's try this again, because it didn't work the first time. So sine of x. Now I can grab and move it. I don't know what happened that first time. So I always do that if that happens. It's just a glitch in the software, I think. So if you grab it with these, get this icon that looks kind of like for a vertical, like the axis there, you can move this line up and down. A lot of students will use this for waves of an ocean or grass. They'll turn it green. And if you grab it in another spot, you can actually change the way this graph looks. So you can get it real tight. You can get it real tall. You can get it real smooth. You can really get this however you want. And by the way, there's a little added feature. Let's say I wanted this to be grass or waves. Let's make it waves. So I can do one more thing. Once I get it in the spot I want, and I don't want to do this until I get it in the spot I want, I can change this equal sign if I want to say less than or equal to. And if I do that, it'll actually shade below. Now what's weird, I'll have to change the color there. Fill color, make it blue. Oh, I guess it is blue. Why does that look purple to me? Not sure. Okay. So that's your sine function. Your logarithmic function, we have done quite a few of these. So y equals log base 10 of x or something like that might be one that you could use. So let's start with something like that. Or let's go back to our powder puff. So the thing about the log function is if you type that in, log of x, that's the function. So if you can find a spot for something like this that works, notice you can't grab and move it. So this one you really have to kind of figure out where you want that. Maybe for the top of this shoe strap, if I move this down just a little bit, it might actually work there. So maybe if I just say minus 3.5, oh, that's not too bad. Maybe I want to move it a little bit left, and let's try that. So let's move it left by inside the parentheses, transformations. If I put like +2, it moves it left. Sorry, 3.8. Once you get it in a spot where you're happy with it, it looks like maybe the top of that. So you can then restrict this function. Again, you hit Control equals to restrict. Restrict it from maybe 0.5 less than x less than 1.5. Again, it's always a good idea to hide that label. Right click on it, hide. That's not too bad for that little piece there. So you can use a log function somewhere in your project, even if it's just a little piece of a log function. Just use your basic transformations to do that. A cubic function we've also dealt with this year. Like y equals x to the third would be your basic one. And then you just use transformations to kind of move that around. So if you typed in x to the third power, we'll make it a different color so it kind of stands out there. because black doesn't stand out very well. How about pink? Maybe change the attributes and make it thicker. So we kind of look for a spot where this might work. Again, hide those labels, get those out of there. So, oh, I see. Maybe that tongue right there. So if I wanted to get just the top part of that tongue, it looks like if I just move this thing down and maybe a little bit to the right. So if I move this, get my cursor next to X here, a little bit right, minus 0.2, and then down minus 0.3, I don't know. Well, that's not too bad, actually. See the top of that tongue there? It fits pretty nicely. So, again, click on it, choose your restriction, so control equals, maybe restrict it, I don't know, from negative 0.7 less than x less than negative 0.3. It's not too bad. Maybe it needs to go a little further on the right here. Maybe negative 0.05. Ah, that's too much. About 0.15. That's not too bad. So you can see it looks like I have part of her tongue there, and so I used an x cubed function for that. And finally, the last one is hyperbolic. This one takes a little bit more work, I think. It's a lot like solving an ellipse. So first you have to get the equation of a hyperbola. It's going to take a little work. So you might want to use the tool. I'd probably go graph entry, equation, and maybe, there it is, number 5, hyperbola. Use this tool, and so kind of figure out where you want to put a hyperbola. I don't know if there's a good place. Maybe down here you could use part of a hyperbola. Maybe for the eyes you could get, it doesn't really look very good there. So you got to figure out somewhere where it looks like it could be hyperbola. I don't see a lot of great places, so I'm going to just try to make maybe this part of a hyperbola. So that's about 3, let's make that negative 5. And I don't know what the width should be there, so I'm just going to, guess what I chose? I wasn't thinking. I really don't want that kind of hyperbola. Let's go back, menu, graph entry, equation, hyperbola. I really want a south-north is what they call it, or a vertical hyperbola. So if you go to that one, again, 3, 5. Oh, I don't want 3, 5. Let's make that 3, negative 5, I guess. Nope, doing it wrong here. So this is 3. This is negative 5. It really forces you to think, even though it's a template that does a lot of this for you. It forces you to do a lot of thinking about this as to where you want things to be. So I'm going to move this up. You can kind of move this, which is nice. So the center, you see that little point there, you can grab it and move it. So, look at that. Look how beautiful that is right there. So I do like this hyperbola for that piece there. It does look quite good. So what you want to do is take this and copy that to your, copy that down, write it down by hand, and I'm going to just clip it and put it here in the Smart Notebook. And let's try to solve that one by hand. So it's going to take a few steps. That's not a square root. It looks kind of like a square root, but it's certainly not. So let's solve this one and see what it does. So I want to move the x part over, so I have y plus 3.33 squared over 2 squared equals 1 minus x minus 3.65 squared over 2 squared. You want to multiply both sides by 2 squared. Then I'll get that and cancel it. So multiply by 2 squared. Then take the square root of both sides. So I'm going to take the square root of both sides. Don't forget plus or minus. So let's see what we have now. Now we have y plus 3.33 equals plus or minus the square root of 2 squared times 1 minus x minus 3.65 squared over 2 squared. Sorry, this is messy. I'm writing with my finger here. And the last step would be to subtract 3.33, subtract 3.33 from each side. And so then I'm going to write that equation. I usually put that at the front. I kind of put this guy right in there. So it'd be negative 3.33 plus or minus square root of all that mess right there. So I'm going to type that in to my TI Nspire. By the way, I think I made one tiny little mistake. This is a minus sign here, so when I move the x over, this is going to become a plus, and this is going to become a plus here. So that was a little mistake I made. Just be careful about that. That first move was to move that over by adding it. So when I do that and go to my Nspire, you can actually just cancel that out. Hit menu, graph entry, function. Type in your function, and I really want the minus part, I think, the minus part of this graph. And so it'll graph the bottom part of the hyperbola there. Go ahead and hide that. And then it's just a matter of restricting it. Again, once you have it in this form, restricting is not too bad. Control equals restrict from, I don't know, 2.5 to 3.5. So 2.5 less than x less than 3.5. And that didn't work out quite as good as I had hoped, but maybe from 3 to 4 will work. And once you're happy with it, you might want to make it thicker, and you've got it. So you can see you can use even these advanced functions you can use in your project.